Hello everyone, I'm Rasha Williams, keeping you updated with the 5th grade Math in a Minute. This week, the focus is on lessons 30 through 32. Students continue learning how to divide fractions and decimals. They start by dividing various types of decimals by non-unit decimals. Finally, they end the week with a focus on interpreting numerical expressions and then evaluating them. What are the keys to a successful week of learning? Students should remember that any division problem can be expressed as a fraction. In fact, rewriting it as a fraction lets them rename it as a unit that isn't a decimal, and that, along with using unit language, will make it much easier to solve. And finally, the emphasis is on using vocabulary to turn phrases into numerical expressions and vice versa. So in lesson 30, scholars have to divide decimals by non-unit decimals. So what's that? Well, last week, you may recall we talked about unit fractions, which are simply fractions with a numerator of 1. Students learn specifically about the unit fractions 1/10, 100th, and 1,000, and how they can all be represented as decimals. And they're stated the same way: 1/10, 100th, 1,000. They're all unit decimals. So the non-unit decimals are those that, when written as fractions, have a numerator other than 1, such as these: 2/10, 2/5, 2/6, and so on. So it means we're going to be dividing numbers like 2 divided by 4/10. Now, to find the quotient, students are going to start doing something slightly new. They're rewriting the division expression as a fraction. Now, this may throw them for a little bit of a loop at first because they are not accustomed to seeing that decimal in the denominator. But they do know that they can multiply the fraction by an equivalent fraction, one that's equal to 1, to rename it as a different unit that is not a decimal. So we multiply by 10/10. It changes the unit, but not the value. And this actually turns it into a basic division fact. 20/4 becomes 20 divided by 4, which we know is 5. Therefore, 2 divided by 4/10 is also 5. In lesson 31, scholars continue more practice with this concept. The numbers just get a little more challenging, and here we are asked to find the quotient of 24 and 6/10 divided by 3/10. This too can be rewritten as a fraction. Students learn when multiplying by 10, the digits simply shift one place to the left on the place value chart, as seen right here. And the same applies if the divisor is 300ths. For example, 24 and 6/10 divided by 300ths. You multiply by 100 hundredths. The digits now shift 2 places to the left on the place value chart. And again, you multiply by the fraction equivalent to 1 to create a new equivalent fraction. There's your answer. So finally, when dealing with those larger numbers, they will have multi-digit dividends. So students who still struggle with long division, they're going to get more opportunities to master that skill, but they can always go back to Old Faithful, which is the place value chart, to use it as a model to help them divide those larger numbers. Now, all of the hard work that we put into Module 4 kind of culminates here in Lesson 32. Scholars are challenged to interpret numerical expressions, evaluate them, and then do a similar task in reverse. So what's all that mean? Well, this lesson right here, first of all, let me just say it's extremely helpful because students really delve into breaking down the mathematical language of the words. And that really helps them with word problems. And they get to practice writing the word form expression of a numeric phrase. So having a solid command of math vocabulary will really help them, not just for this lesson, but for the rest of their lives as they navigate math in future grades and everyday life. So knowing little things like terms that represent answers in math or answers to certain operations can help. For example, if they know that a sum, you're adding, or a difference, you're subtracting, and just as a product is the answer for a multiplication problem, a quotient is the answer for a division problem. These are some of the things they need to know. Other helpful phrases are as much as or times as much as. The word of, these can all be interpreted as multiplication operations. Another helpful one to know is the word twice, which means to multiply by 2 or find the half of a number. If they're asked to do that, they can multiply by 1/2 or divide by 2. And finally, the equal sign. It is what it is. So when you see the word is, it's usually an equal sign. But of course, this list isn't comprehensive, but our young mathematicians will learn these and many other terms for interpreting expressions. Let's look at an example. So the directions say, write the word form expression numerically. So we have the word form, we have the words below, twice the sum of 2/3 and 1 1/6. So we have to turn them into a numerical expression, which is basically it's a math sentence with numbers and operator symbols, okay? So the word twice is the first clue we have. It's the first one we must interpret. What does it mean in math? That's what the students are going to be thinking. We know we will need 2 copies of something because something has to be multiplied 2 times. So as we continue to read, we see the word sum, which is the result of adding. So 2/3 and 1 1/6 have to be added first before multiplying. So we need parentheses to show that we must do the addition before we multiply. Otherwise, if we just work left to right, our answer would not be the same. Next, the script is flipped when they have to write the word form expression numerically. So as you can see, they will have to look at numbers and symbols, which is a math problem, and then rewrite it using words and reading the words and rewriting them as expressions. So, for example, you see this as a homework problem, where on one hand, they'll have to write the numerical expression, and in the other hand, they'll have to write the word expression. Students love the challenge because it's like they're being given a riddle to solve. And, math is a story, and part of that story is read in words. So to succeed, you have to know how to interpret those words. So this lesson basically turns our little scholars into math translators, mastering a language that they will have to use for the rest of their lives. Well, that's all we have for this week. Let us know if we can help you in any way as we strive to improve teaching and learning in every community, for every student, in every classroom, every day.